I found out I wasn't invited to the leadership offsite because the new intern accidentally forwarded me the catering request. It had everyone's name except mine, even Claire, who once asked me if Excel could hear her. When I asked Derek about it, he didn't even look up from his stupid branded water bottles. Your operations now, Mary. Support. You don't need to be there. Support. After 6 years of holding that firm together with chewing gum, sarcasm, and 4 a.m. server patches, I was suddenly support. No more strategy meetings. No more exec syncs. My access badge now beeped red at the upstairs conference room. They even moved my desk closer to the copier. That was the part that really singed my eyebrows. Derek didn't even fire me. He just slid me sideways, like moving a coffee cup out of the way. No confrontation, no demotion. Just polite nudges until one day I woke up and realized I'd become the office lamp. Still on, still warm, but no one looked twice. And yet I stayed, because I knew something Derek didn't. The thing about being sidelined is that you get quiet. And the thing about getting quiet is that you start noticing things, like how the final pitch deck Derek kept talking about was more theater than content, or how the timeline he was sending to the acquiring firm had 6 dates that didn't match our internal database, or how he started pushing branding harder than tech integration, like he was selling a story instead of a system. But I bit my tongue, smiled, made the copies, highlighted the wrong dates in yellow, and pretended it was an accident. If you're wondering why I didn't raise hell or throw coffee in his face like some movie heroine, well, that's not real life. Real life is knowing when to hold your cards. Real life is toner on your hands and a smirk you don't let slip. By the way, if you've made it this far and you're nodding along because you've been in the quiet seats before, hit that like button and subscribe. It takes a few seconds and it tells the team that these stories matter because 90% of folks never click anything. Be one of the 10% who actually gives a damn. All right, back to the circus. So, I played the part Operations Mary, Copier Queen, Quiet Shadow. Derek, on the other hand, was peacocking around the office like we were already bought, talking loudly into speakerphone. Yes, the $50M valuation feels fair, but I believe our synergy potential puts us closer to $75M, he said one day to no one next to the kombucha fridge. He started wearing these tailored blazers and introduced himself as managing director, which wasn't even his title. The kicker? He started calling me his branding advisor. Me, the same person who wrote half the internal documentation the acquiring firm was asking for. The same person who built the integration flow for customer service handoff, warehouse sync, and billing API authentication. But sure, branding, I smiled and nodded. The moment I knew something was truly off, though, came the day he held an all-hands to prep for the pitch. It was him, 2 newly minted MBAs with fonts on their resumes, and Claire, yes, the Excel whisperer, now a data storytelling specialist. Derek walked in like a B-tier sitcom boss, holding 3 flash drives and saying, "The narrative is our product. The tech will follow." That's when I knew he had no clue what he was doing. He hadn't looped in IT. He hadn't finalized the technical risk disclosures. And the integration section in the deck was literally a screenshot of a Trello board with the words Phase 1, a line on it. And guess who he asked to run the printouts for the next exec touchpoint with the acquiring team? Right, yours truly. That's when the real planning began. Quiet, focused, strategic. I remembered meeting Sarah, the acquiring firm's COO, once at a client roundtable back when I was still allowed to have a title. She was sharp, no nonsense. We talked shop. She'd even asked for my card. So that night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. I cleaned up the pizza boxes from Derek's fake war room and sat alone at my new desk, next to the Xerox, and drafted a message. Just one line, "Hi, Sarah. I've noticed a few inconsistencies in the deck. Let me know if you'd like to cross-reference with internal documentation before the pitch. No accusations, no drama, just a crack in the glass." And I pressed send. Xerox made a noise I can only describe as a mechanical death rattle. Then it coughed up a cloud of black toner like it had smoked 2 packs and given up. My hands, black, my blouse, looked like I'd wrestled a squid in a fax machine. And the stack of glossy pitch packets, still half-printed, tray jammed, display blinking some code that probably meant kill me. It was past 11 p.m. Everyone else was gone, except Derek and his branding team, holed up in the glass fishbowl conference room, practicing their smiles. I heard someone say, "Let's do the walk-on again, but more effortless." Someone else asked if the slide transitions had emotional integrity. Meanwhile, I was scrubbing my hands with industrial wipes that smelled like burning lemons and praying toner wasn't carcinogenic. Then I heard the footsteps. Derek's loafers made a smacking sound when he walked fast, like angry applause. I didn't even look up. I was too busy trying to save the last functioning ink drum. He stopped behind me, breathed through his nose like a man allergic to effort, and said, "Low, sharp, surgical, try to look professional tomorrow." I didn't answer, not because I didn't have something to say. Believe me, the speech was already locked and loaded. 6 years of loyalty, back-end upgrades, overnight audits, and last-minute saves. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just stood there, toner smeared, jaw tight, and let him walk off, muttering something about optics. What he didn't know, what he never cared to know, was that the CEO of the acquiring firm, Leonard, was obsessed with system integration. Not storyboards, not branded lanyards. He'd made that clear in his quarterly memos. If it doesn't scale, it doesn't stay. I'd read every one of them while Derek was getting his headshots retouched. But the moment that really cracked something open inside me wasn't Derek. It was Claire. She poked her head into the copy room around midnight, eyeliner smudged, sipping her fourth La Croix, and saw the wreckage. Oh, she whispered, holding back a laugh. Mary girl, you look like a chimney sweep. I forced a smile. Just a little toner mishap. Yikes. Hope you don't get any on the decks. Derek said they cost like $4 a page. Then she disappeared like a goblin in heels. That's when it clicked. Derek didn't want me in the room tomorrow because he was afraid of what I looked like. Not what I knew, not what I'd built, not the back-end infrastructure, the API handoffs, or the service-level continuity I'd personally mapped across 7 departments. Just the optics. That was his word for everything. I finished the packets, rebooted the Xerox twice, taped up the toner compartment, filed the incident report, and I washed my hands in the janitor's sink until my knuckles turned red. The toner didn't fully come out. Fine, let them see the stains. At 1:12 a.m., I reopened my laptop, found Sarah's reply from earlier. Thanks for the heads up. What do you mean by inconsistencies? That was all it took. A single sentence with no emojis, no punctuation games, just that cool COO tone I remembered, like she was already in the war room, already smelling the bullshit. I took a deep breath and typed. Timeline submitted doesn't reflect actual system readiness. Attached are internal logs and gap analysis. Willing to walk through at your convenience. I reread it 3 times. Clinical, measured, no drama. I hit send. Then I added one more line. FYI, there is no current failover redundancy for logistics nodes, contrary to the pitch deck slide 27. Documentation attached. If that meant nothing to her, fine. But if it did, well, that would mean someone was about to start asking the right questions. And someone else, someone who cared about optics more than uptime, was going to sweat. I closed the laptop, left the toner-stained blouse hanging on the back of my chair like a flag, and I went home. Sleep didn't come easy, but clarity, that came like a freight train. My phone buzzed at 6:42 a.m. I hadn't slept much, just laid there in that weird limbo where your brain won't shut up and everything smells faintly like toner. I thought maybe it was Derek texting about packet alignment or some other corporate nonsense, but no. Sarah Morrow, Equinova Systems message, got your note. Let's chat. 10 minutes, I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't make coffee. I didn't even bother to fix the pillow creases etched across my face. I just dragged myself to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and clicked join call. She was already there. Sarah looked exactly how I remembered her, hair in a knot, zero makeup, sipping from a steel travel mug with nope stenciled in fading letters. And those eyes, COO eyes, the kind that don't blink unless you're bleeding or on fire. Mary, she said, calm but direct. I've been hoping someone on your side would say something. That sentence nearly unspooled me. I gave her the short version first. No rambling, no whining, just clean facts, the live data discrepancies between what Derek was pitching and what we actually had. The non-existent failover testing. The staged screenshots, the timeline that assumed miracles. I even cited the file names and the build versions. My voice only cracked once when I said he thinks infrastructure is a vibe. Sarah didn't laugh, she didn't blink. She just said, yep, that tracks. Apparently, they'd already had internal concerns. Derek had been slippery, flashy. His decks had no back-end substance. And when they asked for raw documentation, he kept punting to the next milestone. I told her he'd skipped 2 compliance checkpoints and that his integration roadmap was a JPEG. Jesus Christ, she muttered, scribbling something. And what about the continuity clause? I blinked. What clause in your internal SLA? Section 12B. Lists continuity of operations officer as a required role for acquisition transition. Your org filed a version 3 years ago with one name listed, yours? I stared at her. That's still active? She nodded, unless you've amended it. Has Derek reassigned it? No, I said slowly, the air thickening. He probably doesn't even know what that is. Sarah smiled, tight-lipped, not smug, not amused, just confirming a suspicion. All right, she said. Then we may have a back door. Silence stretched between us, but not the awkward kind. The loaded kind. The we're planning something kind. Then she added almost too casually, can you prep alternate integration documentation? Just in case. My throat went dry. You mean like, yes, full stack, real files, real systems, not Derek's movie trailer. I exhaled. It felt like cracking ice under my ribs. I'll need a few hours. You've got until EOD, she said, if anyone asks. You're just providing support materials. I smiled, for the first time in weeks. The call ended. I sat there for a moment, stunned. Then I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Alt Deck Real Ops. And just like that, I wasn't out of the picture anymore. I was the picture. They just didn't know it yet. First thing I did, pull the real integration logs, server sync times, platform usage stats, the actual load balancing reports we never bothered to pretty up because Derek said data fatigue is real. Next, I drafted the alternate roadmap, one that could actually work. No emojis, no inspirational headers, just clean lines, real risks, timelines that wouldn't collapse under pressure. I annotated each with internal references. Hyperlinked the architecture diagrams. Marked the docs with an FYI only footer, just in case they leaked. At 3:28 p.m., I got another message. Sarah, you're doing great. Can you also include your user impact projections? She knew it was me keeping the lights on this whole time. Not Derek, not the branding gremlins, not Claire and her pastel bullet points. Me, the woman in the toner-stained blouse, rebuilding a fortress behind the copier. By 6 p.m., the alternate materials were zipped, encrypted, and shared via secure link. Sarah replied in 5 minutes flat. Received. This is gold. Sit tight, so I did. But this time I wasn't quiet out of fear. I was quiet because I was the storm on the horizon. Calm, precise, and pointed straight at Derek's house of cards. Derek ordered gold-foiled binder clips. I wish I were joking. He stood in the center of the war room holding a mood board titled Disruption Elegance, pointing at fonts like he was curing cancer. The orange gradient, he said, squinting at a slide, should evoke controlled innovation. Think sunrise on a smart city. Meanwhile, I was knee-deep in compliance logs, redlining our vendor integration contracts, and quietly stitching together a real risk analysis that didn't involve mood lighting or Helvetica. My new desk, still strategically parked next to the Xerox, had become a staging ground for quiet rebellion. Second laptop tucked under a stack of outdated marketing brochures ran simulations at night. My primary screen was split between Sarah's Slack thread and a spreadsheet titled Do Not Present Internal Use Only, which was a lie, of course. It was already in Sarah's hands. She'd been adding my documents discreetly, subtly to the pitch's background materials. Nothing flashy, just links in footnotes, appendix sections. The kind of places Derek never looked, because they didn't fit into his narrative arc. That suited me fine. Let him keep rehearsing his opening monologue like he was auditioning for a TED knockoff. Let him shuffle color-coded flash drives and practice his jawline in the reflective glass. Let him call me just support when he needed more toner or couldn't remember the Wi-Fi password. I'd stopped caring about being seen because Sarah saw me. And better yet, the system saw me. The audit logs, API calls, the version history, every piece of real work I'd ever done had my fingerprints on it. Not metaphorically. Literally. Metadata doesn't lie, and Derek had never learned to scrub it. One afternoon, while Derek was berating Claire about the slide animations, I said evoke, not vomit, I was compiling the server integrity reports. The version he planned to show claimed 98.6% test coverage. Our real systems, sitting at 61.3%, and one of the most critical ones had failed the last security audit entirely. I didn't panic. I annotated the report, linked the raw data, and sent it to Sarah under the file name coverage truth v2, PDF. She responded with a single emoji, a lock, secured. By now we had a rhythm. She'd ask a quiet question. I'd send a louder answer. She never said it outright, but I knew she was positioning the deck so that, if things went sideways, the real substance was all there, ready to speak for itself, ready to expose Derek as the hologram he was. I started eating lunch at my desk again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It became my perch, my war room, my control tower. The branding team barely looked at me now, which gave me more space to operate. At one point, Derek poked his head in and said, "Hey, Xerox Queen, make sure we've got extra packets for the execs. Printed, not stapled, binder clips, gold ones." I gave him a thumbs up without turning around. He smirked and muttered something like, "God bless support staff," before walking off. If only he knew. Every time he minimized me, it reinforced what he thought I was. Every time he dismissed me, it confirmed that he wasn't looking in the right direction. I didn't need credit. I didn't need the spotlight. I needed something bigger. Leverage, and oh, I was building it. Because under all the branding fluff and taglines under Derek's surface-level sizzle reel lived the guts of a company, and I was the only one actually touching them. So I kept working. Quiet, focused, methodical. I compiled the user impact analysis, mapping what would break if Derek's integration plan went live. Spoiler alert, most of it. I created a real-time dependency tracker, built a risk tiering model, designed a redundancy proposal that wouldn't crash under actual load. I even ran silent drills. Just me, a VPN, and 3 VMs in the cloud faking a system migration Derek claimed was already validated. It wasn't, and I had the logs to prove it. I packaged the results in a deck titled Integration Reality Confidential Eyes Only, and Sarah slipped it into the final pitch portal, masked under an innocuous link labeled Supplementary Operational Data. No one else knew it was there, not yet. But when they found it, when the questions started coming, Derek wouldn't have answers. Only I would, and Sarah knew that. I didn't need to fight anymore. I just needed to wait. Derek stood in front of the whiteboard, marker in hand like he was assigning combat zones. "Okay," he said, circling a rectangle labeled Presentation Zone. "This is where we sit. Forward-facing, clean lines, symmetry matters. Claire, you'll open with market presence. Evan, you handle innovation. I'll anchor with vision." Then he drew a tiny square in the far back corner of the mock conference layout. He tapped it twice like dropping a pin on a map he never intended to visit. "Mary, you'll sit here, behind the tech table. When Leonard asks for printouts, just make sure you've got extras. Behind the tech table." My name wasn't on a single slide. I wasn't listed in the agenda. I wasn't copied on the confirmation email, but I had loaded that deck like a Trojan horse, and I had a front row seat to watch it unfold from the shadows, of course. Derek caught my silence and tilted his head like a confused dog. That okay? Or do you need to feel more involved? I smiled. That's fine. He nodded, satisfied. Good. Remember to wear something clean and neutral tones. Nothing that distracts. As if my blouse had ever distracted anyone from his spray-on charisma and shark-white teeth. That evening, the office thinned out early. The branding team left in a tide of nervous energy and overpriced athleisure. Claire whispered, "Tomorrow's the day," like we were launching a rocket instead of selling a mess dressed up in gradients. I stayed late, again. The silence helped. I pulled up the deck one last time, skimmed the appendices, checked every link, every footnote, every backup doc. It was all there, the real work, the systems that mattered, buried like gemstones in the tail end of a glossy fantasy. Then I added one more file. It was an SLA clause. Simple, clean, the kind of thing you overlook when you're designing your pitch to look good on an iPad. Section 12. B. In the event of acquisition or operational transfer, all decisions relating to technical continuity shall defer to the listed continuity officer on file. And who was listed? Me. I embedded it as a linked PDF in the Technical Appendix Support Reference Materials folder. It didn't need to be flashy. It just needed to exist. I encrypted the original, timestamped it with a third-party cert, and logged it with our internal file system. If this went sideways, that clause would light up like a legal flare, and Derek wouldn't even know what hit him. Just as I was zipping the final build, my phone lit up. Sarah Morrow message, "Sit wherever you want." You know who you are? I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't understand, but because the weight of it hit me all at once. For weeks I'd been invisible, strategic, silent, and here was Sarah pulling back the curtain and confirming what I already felt in my bones. They saw me, not as support, not as Xerox queen, not as toner-stained scenery behind Derek's jazz hands, but as the one holding the keys. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, instead. I closed the laptop, washed my hands one more time, and packed my bag. The blouse I chose for the next morning still had a faint toner stain near the hem. Let it show. Let them all see who did the dirty work. And when Derek strutted into the pitch tomorrow, all polished ego and clickbait promises, I'd be there. Behind the tech table, or beside the CEO, or right in the middle of the fire, wherever the hell I felt like sitting. Because the deck was loaded. The stage was set, and the only person who didn't know what was coming was him. The conference room smelled like expensive leather chairs and panic sweat. I was the first one in, 7:18 a.m. sharp, wearing the same blazer I'd worn to my first client pitch 7 years ago. The cuffs were frayed, and yes, the toner stain still ghosted the left sleeve. I didn't hide it, I ironed around it. The stack of pitch decks, both Derek's flashy version and my quietly upgraded background materials, was laid out with surgical precision. USPs labeled, coffee set up, Wi-Fi tested, tech station humming like a prayer wheel. Then came Derek. He swept in like a man auditioning for his own reality show, all tailored confidence and overpracticed humility. His cologne hit first, something citrusy and aggressive, like a lemon trying to rob you. He stopped cold when he saw me already seated at the end of the long walnut table, laptop open, HDMI tested. "Jesus Mary," he hissed, adjusting his cufflinks. "Could you not look like you rolled in from a toner explosion?" I just looked up and said, "Printer works." He gave a tight-lipped smirk. "Please stay out of the way. They don't need confusion about who's leading this pitch." I didn't answer. No need. Let the man enjoy his final hour of self-delusion. People started trickling in. A legal associate, 2 folks from integration. Sarah entered last, calm as a moon tide. She gave me a single nod, barely perceptible. I nodded back. Then the door opened. Leonard, CEO of Equinova. The man who once said in an investor memo that execution eats charisma for breakfast, which made it especially poetic when Derek practically lunged forward with his hand outstretched like a middle schooler meeting his first senator. Leonard. Derek beamed, so honored you could make it in person, but Leonard walked right past his handshake. Didn't slow down, didn't blink. Just glided toward the tech station like he already knew who he was looking for. "Get that Xerox running?" he asked, eyes locking on me. There was no wink, no sarcasm, just a dry smirk. An inside joke between professionals who actually read the damn appendices. I nodded. Decks are loaded. Supplementals on Drive D. Sarah covered a cough with her hand, which might have been a laugh. Derek was still standing there, hand half extended, mouth slowly trying to turn the smirk into a knowing grin. It didn't land. Leonard sat at the head of the table, glanced once toward Derek and said, "Whenever you're ready." And just like that, the performance began. Derek launched into his pitch like it was opening night on Broadway. He talked about market synergy and disruption potential, used words like ideation quadrant and experiential backend fusion, which meant nothing and said less. I watched silently from my chair at the side of the room, not the back, not behind the tech cart, the side where real consultants sit, where questions get answered, where decisions get made. Sarah flipped through the pitch deck slowly, almost bored, but I saw her eyes dart now and then to me, to the tech packet, to Appendix G. Leonard kept a flat expression. No nods, no smiles, just watching. Listening. Derek moved from slide to slide like a man trying to sell a house he hadn't walked through in daylight. When he got to the integration framework slide, the one with the Trello board screenshot and 4 pastel arrows labeled align/build/deploy/celebrate, he beamed like a game show host waiting for applause. Silence. Leonard leaned back. And the technical continuity? Who's owning that? Derek blinked. Well, obviously our team will handle transition holistically. Leonard stared. Holistically? Derek tried again. Our branding forward architecture. I didn't move, I didn't smile, I didn't speak, but Derek felt the shift. I saw it in his eyes when they flicked to Sarah, then to Leonard, then to me. He was realizing, slowly, painfully, that something was off, that the pitch wasn't landing, that the room had recalibrated, that the Xerox girl might have brought more than toner. We were only getting started. Sarah turned the pages with the patience of someone waiting for a child to admit they broke the lamp. She made it to Appendix G, tapped the corner twice with her pen, and asked the question like she already knew the answer. Can you walk us through the server migration dependencies? Specifically, how you're maintaining uptime during the CRM transfer window? Derek blinked, smiled, leaned forward like this was a fun improv game. Right, he said, stalling. Great question. So we're keeping things modular. It's all about elasticity and, container-based flexibility. Think dynamic failover. Leonard didn't move, didn't blink. Sarah raised an eyebrow. So you're using a container architecture? Oh, absolutely, Derek said, bluffing. Dockerized, full-stack, real-time monitoring, which would have sounded impressive if any of it were true. Sarah flipped another page. Which cluster are you deploying the load balancer on? Derek opened his mouth, closed it, glanced at me like I was a server he could reboot. That's when Leonard turned. He looked directly at me, calm, curious, as if finally tuning into the actual signal beneath all the noise. I met his gaze, then nodded once. It's outlined in the technical assessment, pages 41 through 56, I said quietly. Primary load balancing sits on cluster B, with fallback to see if the migration threshold exceeds 70%. No flourish, no smile, just facts. Sarah didn't look up, she just said, thought so. Leonard tapped his pen on the table. Can we take a look? Derek jumped in. Oh, that section's super dense. We can circle back, but Leonard was already scrolling. Sarah slid her tablet across the table toward one of her engineers, who began highlighting sections like he'd just found a buried will. No one looked at Derek again. From that point forward, every question in the room floated in my direction. Infrastructure readiness? I answered it. Security protocols. Referenced the audit logs and cross-team validation from last quarter. System downtime during prior upgrades. I pulled up the table and noted which services experienced latency and how we solved it without breaking NDA, of course. Derek tried once more to reinsert himself. And just to add, Leonard held up one hand. We're fine, thanks. That's when Derek realized he was officially no longer in the room. His body was still seated there, yes. His voice still worked. But his credibility had exited somewhere between the CRM question and the moment I said cluster B. I didn't gloat. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. Instead, I kept my eyes on Sarah's pen. It hovered above the legal pad, tapping once for each confirmation, each point checked off. Each document they didn't need Derek to explain anymore. Leonard finally leaned back. This technical assessment, it's solid. Who put this together? Derek perked up, about to lie. I spoke first. I did. The room went still. Sarah looked at Leonard and said, and that's why we brought her in. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was recognition. Recognition that the pitch had ended and the evaluation had begun. Derek sat back, smaller now. His designer blazer didn't fit the moment anymore. His role, hollowed out in real time, was collapsing under the weight of truth and toner. And I kept answering, clearly, efficiently, without needing permission. The meeting didn't end so much as it quietly dissolved. Leonard closed his folder, tapped the table once, and simply said, "We'll be in touch." Everyone knew what that meant. It wasn't a dismissal, it was a verdict, executed with the kind of finality that didn't need raised voices or slamming doors. Derek stood there frozen, like he hadn't quite processed that the entire pitch had been rerouted midstream, away from his hands and into mine. His smile was still technically on his face, but it looked like it had been left out in the sun too long, melting around the edges. Sarah didn't speak to him, not yet, she just looked at me. Can we talk? We stepped out into the hallway. Neutral carpet, fake plants, nothing dramatic. No grand confrontation music playing in the background, just the hum of a vending machine and the low clack of someone typing in a nearby office. Sarah leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You saved the whole damn thing, she said flatly, but not without warmth. I shrugged. Didn't think toner fingers would be what tipped it. She smiled. It wasn't. It was the continuity clause and the logs and the risk model. And the failover design. Didn't pitch a dream, Mary. You documented reality. I didn't say anything, just waited. Then she asked the question I didn't know I'd been craving. Would you be willing to lead integration as internal staff? It didn't hit me all at once. It hit in slow layers, like pulling back a curtain and realizing the spotlight is finally on you, not because you begged for it, but because you earned it when no one was looking. I nodded. Yeah, I'd be willing. We didn't shake hands. We didn't hug. We just shared that quiet, tired look between two women who'd both spent far too long being underestimated. Then came the real moment. Behind me, the door opened. Derek stepped into the hallway, trailed by one of our own lawyers, Mark. He wasn't making small talk. He wasn't even pretending. He was holding a file and walking like someone with instructions. Derek, Mark said, expression unreadable. You and I need to review a clause in your operating agreement. Derek looked between the two of us, me and Sarah, and then down at the folder. I couldn't tell if he recognized the shape of his own undoing, but he followed Mark down the corridor without a word. No shouting, no denials, just the hush of consequence. Something had triggered, a clause, maybe tied to performance or misrepresentation. I didn't know which one. I didn't need to. What mattered was this: he wasn't coming back into that room. By the end of the day, Sarah forwarded me a draft memo from their transition team. The subject line read, Integration Leadership Realignment Confidential. It had my name on it. Mary Fallon, Interim Director, Post-Acquisition Integration. Below that, it listed direct report lines, transition scope, and a bullet point that read, Primary contact for operational alignment across all systems. There was no mention of Derek, not in the header, not in the footer, not even in the CCs. He had been scrubbed. I didn't pop champagne. I didn't scream into the void or flip a table or post a passive-aggressive LinkedIn update. I just forwarded the memo to my personal email and archived it under a folder called Closure. Then I got up, made myself a cup of bad office coffee, and sat back down at the Xerox, still humming, still ready. Quiet justice, not revenge. But damn, it tasted close. The conference room was colder than usual, like the HVAC system was staging its own power play. It was signing day, long table, bottled water labels facing forward, legal pads stacked like pancakes. Sarah was there, Leonard too. Their counsel, a paralegal, and someone from compliance sat like statues on the far end. And Derek. Derek was there by accident, or maybe habit. He wasn't on the calendar invite, but he'd shown up in his blue serious day suit, wearing that tight, strained smile that said I'm still in control, even as the walls shrank around him. He sat 3 seats away from me, tapping a Montblanc pen like a nervous metronome. Leonard opened the deal folder slowly, like he was unsheathing a blade, one clean motion. Then he reached into the inside flap, pulled out the signature page, and turned. Not to Derek, to me. He held out the pen, not a word. The room tilted, not in shock, but in confirmation. I didn't hesitate, I didn't blink. I took the pen with steady fingers, rolled my sleeve up just enough to keep the ink stain from smudging the document, and signed. No pause, no theatrics, just Mary Fallon, blue ink, one signature. Done. Derek made a small noise, half gasp, half protest. She's a contractor, he choked, voice cracking like glass under a boot. Leonard didn't respond. It was the acquiring counsel who answered, flipping a page in a binder and speaking without looking up. She's the continuity clause holder. You signed it. 6 words, they could have been a funeral bell. Derek didn't argue, not really. His mouth opened once, then closed. He stared at the document like it had personally betrayed him. His pen, his precious Montblanc, stopped tapping. Sarah collected the signed copies with surgical precision, like she was cutting him out of the frame. He wasn't asked to initial. He wasn't even asked to stay. He didn't leave immediately. He just evaporated, in real time. Eyes darting, posture caving, trying to hold on to something that had already let go of him. And I didn't look back. There was no speech. No throat clearing. No humble brag about the real work or some teary-eyed monologue about justice. I just handed the pen back to Leonard, gave Sarah a nod, and closed my copy of the binder with a soft thud. We stood, no applause, just motion. Leonard looked at me as we stepped out of the room. You good to start Monday? I already started 3 weeks ago, I said. He smiled. That's what I figured. And then he walked away, coat over his arm, no ceremony needed. As I gathered my bag, I passed the Xerox in the hallway, still humming, still warm, still alive with the soft rhythm of quiet utility. I paused for just a second, placed my hand on it. You did good, I whispered. And then I walked out, ink-stained and calm, the $50 million deal already mine to carry, just like I planned. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.